Cozy Heart My Little Pony Fanfic by StarThief. Prologue. Forgiveness is hard to give and to obtain. It's always important to recognize that trust is something you earn, something you win. It isn't something you hand out easily to just anyone, because of the risks that come with placing your trust in someone who might not deserve it. And yet, there will always be those willing to take the risk. There will be those who reach out a hoof to someone the world has already left behind, or, in this case, a hoof. Please tell me this hunch isn't wrong. Chapter 1: The Story of the Little Pegasus. The day was quite lively in the great and beautiful city of Canterlot. As always, everything was fun and peaceful in this elegant and vibrant city. Meanwhile, in the castle's statue gardens, a small group of foals followed their teacher, who guided them and showed them each statue, explaining what they meant. The field trip had been going on for a while, so some of the foals were already causing trouble in the line. Others were distracted by everything except their teacher's explanation. As everyone moved along, two little colts bumped into each other. They glared at one another. Their annoyed looks lasted a few seconds, until finally one of them spoke. "Watch where you're walking, you almost made me fall," said the first. "It was your fault for standing there halfway through a step," snapped the other colt. "Come on, move." "Of course not. Apologize first." "But it was your fault, you apologize." Their argument was abruptly cut off when the shadow of the teacher fell over them. Both quickly turned to look at her. Her annoyance was obvious. Not only had they fallen behind the rest of the group, but they'd also started arguing. "Ahem. Well, since I see you both are paying complete attention to the field trip, I suppose there's no problem with you explaining the meaning of the statue in front of you," said the teacher in a very serious tone, staring at them. "Go on." The two colts looked at each other again, no longer annoyed. This time they were nervous, sharing a kind of fraternity in search of comfort or mutual support. It lasted only a moment, until one of them, who had been frozen for a bit, took a step forward, swallowed air, and looked at his teacher. "It's a Dragocotus, a creature with a pony's head, turkey legs, a lizard's tail, and antlers of, a deer," he said, doubtful about the last part. The teacher just looked at the little colt, a little calmer. She was still annoyed, of course, but the description he'd given was rather funny in a way. She sighed softly and shook her head, then lifted a hoof and pointed at the statue. "It's a Draconequus, a creature made of parts of many other creatures, in this case, a pony's head, one eagle claw and the other a lion's paw, a snake's tail, and many other traits from other species. This being is the very embodiment of chaos. What's interesting about this statue is that it is a very important one, and we're about to see why. It is one of the beings who, many moons ago, helped save Equestria. The curious thing is that he used to be evil and sought to impose his reign of chaos over all the ponies of our realm. That was the case until our Princess of Friendship, along with the other bearers of the elements of harmony, stopped him. Later, they made it their task to see the good in him and bring it to light." The two colts listened closely to their teacher's explanation, at first because they'd been called out, but as the story went on, their attention focused completely on it. When she finished, the teacher looked back at them and, smiling, said, "Now, who knows this being's name?" They looked at each other again, then back at their teacher, and with a smile opened their mouths, but their expression changed abruptly to one of astonishment when they saw the statue was no longer in its place. Only the pedestal remained, completely empty. They tried to say something about it, but they were quickly interrupted by a voice behind them. "Oh, his name is Discord, the Great, the Powerful, the Handsome, and the super-duper fun Lord of Chaos," said Discord himself, now standing behind the two, raising his hand to speak as if he were just another student in the class. Everyone, including the teacher, stared in astonishment at Discord, who was standing there as if nothing were unusual. No one knew what to say. They just stared for several seconds, until Discord spoke again. "Oh, come on, I'm not that ugly for you to look at me like that." "Am I?" he said, then snapped his fingers, conjuring a mirror to check himself. "Nope, same old face, very handsome." "Oh, come on, Discord, stop bothering the children," said a female voice, accompanied by the sound of hooves on the floor. Again, everyone turned toward the direction of the voice. The surprise was much greater when they saw that it was none other than the Princess of Friendship herself, Twilight Sparkle, walking toward them with almost natural elegance, accompanied by a grand flash and beautiful chance, at least until her expression turned confused. Chance? From where? Twilight quickly glanced to either side only to see two copies of Discord, one holding a stage light, and the other wearing a toga and doing the chanting, both to give the princess a dramatic entrance. "Discord," said Twilight, fixing a stern look on the original Discord. "Well, your loss. Sorry, folks, that was good, but it's not what this production is aiming for." "We're calling it," Discord said to his two copies, who, upon hearing him, put on sad faces, gathered their things, and walked away with their heads down. "Why, Your Majesty, it's an honor to see you," said the teacher, bowing together with the rest of the children. Twilight just smiled and gently signaled them to stand up. She really didn't care much for curtsies in her presence. It was a formality at events, but outside of those, it even made her uncomfortable. She gave a gentle smile to the teacher and her students, then she approached them and spoke. "Good day, little ones. I hope your visit to the castle has been good so far. Don't forget to listen to your teacher about everything, okay? I won't take up more of your time, go on with your tour," she said, keeping her smile, then started walking. "Why yes, thank you, Princess." "You heard her, children, time to keep going. We still have to see the statue of the three fearsome villains," said the teacher as she moved along with her students. "Yippee! That one's my favorite," said Discord, making a tourist guide outfit appear on himself, complete with a megaphone. He even made caps and pamphlets appear for the teacher and the children. "I'll show you myself," he added, placing himself at the front and beginning to walk. "Discord!" Twilight shouted, trying to call him back, but it was too late. Still, she trusted he wouldn't get them into trouble, or at least she wanted to believe that, so she just sighed and continued through the castle gardens until she reached the exit. Once she left, she ran into Discord again, now waiting for her in a black suit and black sunglasses, like a bodyguard. Twilight just looked confused and glanced back toward the field trip, or what she could still see of it, and saw the tour guide Discord still there. "Relax, they're in good hands," said Discordifine, "and who are we going to see?" "Flurry Heart is coming to Canterlot for vacation. We've been talking about this for a long time, and it's finally going to happen. We're both very excited about it, so I'm heading to the city's train station to welcome her," said Twilight with a smile. It was true that they had been writing to each other recently about this vacation. The most excited was Flurry Heart, who had admired her Aunt Twilight since she was little. She wanted to learn everything from her and even be like her. So much so that this vacation had already been on the table before, but every time they thought it would be possible, something happened and messed up their plans, forcing them to postpone. That went on for almost 2 years, until finally this time everything seemed to point to it truly happening after all. Twilight just had to go meet Cadance, Shining Armor, and Flurry Heart at the station. Nothing could go wrong now. She was so sure and excited that not even the fact that Discord was present bothered her. It was already common for him to show up whenever something could be perfect, only to make it difficult. It was his peculiar way of showing friendship. Even so, this time not even that bothered her. At any other time, she would already be annoyed or wishing Fluttershy would come take Discord away like a mother picking up her child. "Well, so you're going to have the little crystal princess in Canterlot all summer. Sounds great. Sounds like you have your entire schedule free to take care of her and do your royal duties at the same time." "Nothing to worry about, Your Majesty," Discord said in a mocking tone. He was trying to get Twilight at least a little worried, but nothing he did seemed to bother her. He'd been at it since morning. When Twilight woke up that very morning, Discord brought her a tray with a flour sandwich and a glass of orange juice, but it was actually just water with hot sauce, which he pretended he had mixed up. A while later, Discord made himself a nice salad with a few books from the library. Finally, he spent a good while sitting on the royal throne, giving orders and permissions without a care, which made Twilight have to resolve more than one dispute in the castle. Although it was indeed annoying, nothing seemed to dampen her excitement at finally seeing her niece, sister-in-law, and brother. "Not in the slightest, nothing to worry about," Twilight replied with a teasing smile at Discord. "Ugh. It's pointless if you don't get angry." "Have I lost my touch?" said Discord. "Ha. Sorry, better luck next time." A few minutes later they were already at the train station. While Discord now wore a serious expression, Twilight had a big smile on her face. After a while, the train from the Crystal Empire finally pulled into the station. As soon as it stopped in front of Discord and Twilight, she began bouncing lightly with excitement, waiting for the doors to open, and then they did. The doors opened and 2 guards stepped out to stand on either side, and a third took a few more steps and bowed to Twilight. "Your Majesty," said the guard. Twilight returned the bow and then watched as that guard, with blue mane and orange coat, stepped aside to finally allow Cadance to emerge from the train, who, upon stepping out, smiled at Twilight. "Twilight, it's so good to see you. It's been a long time since we last saw each other outside of some royal event," said Cadance. "Likewise." "I'm very glad to see you, Cadance." "Welcome," Twilight replied. "It's good to see you too, Discord," said Cadance. "Naya," he answered. After that, Twilight turned back to the train just in time to see Shining Armor step out, smiling at her. Twilight took a few steps and, once at her brother's side, hugged him affectionately with one of her wings, and he returned the hug just as warmly. "Twilight, I thought I was the older one, but every time we see each other it gets harder to hug you," said Shining Armor. Twilight just laughed with a slight blush on her cheeks, then lifted her gaze to the one she most longed to see. There she was, Flurry Heart, looking at Twilight with a sweet smile and a slight blush on her cheeks. Once their eyes finally met, both took one step that immediately turned into several, until they were face to face. Then they hugged tightly while the others watched, smiling. After a few seconds they pulled apart and looked at each other, then took certain positions and started a greeting. "Sunrays at daybreak," said Twilight. "Hoofbump," replied Flurry, following her aunt's steps in rhythm, and then to say hello, Twilight finished, ending the greeting with Flurry Heart, upon which both laughed and then hugged again with affection. "Just look at you, Flurry, dear, you're bigger every time I see you." I guess so, yes, very cute and fun. Why are we still here?" "Let's go, ponies, I'm hungry and Twilight has a lovely meal planned at the castle," said Discord, looking at the others. Discord. "Ugh. Although he's right, we can go to the castle, we'll be more comfortable there," Twilight replied with a smile, then watched as Cadance and Shining Armor dismissed the guards so they could board the train again, not without first noticing the appearance of the Blue Mane guard. This brought a bit of blush to Twilight's cheeks. That pony noticed before going in, so he smiled slightly and nodded his head in farewell, which made Twilight hide part of her face behind one wing. "That was Flash, yes. He's one of the best in the Crystal Empire's guard, he always stands out in training," said Shining Armor with a proud smile, completely oblivious to Twilight's reaction. Meanwhile, Cadance and Flurry Heart smiled, having understood everything, and simply started walking toward the castle. As they went, they began to chat about the journey and other things, especially Flurry Heart, who didn't stop bombarding Twilight with 1,000 questions about what it was like to be the ruler of Equestria and also about how all the times she saved it had gone. Some were even stories Flurry Heart had already heard more than once, like the story of how Twilight got her cutie mark or when she and the others defeated Discord when he was still bad. With that last one, they could feel his gaze on them, attentive to the details. It was clear he wanted to interrupt to add one detail or another. It went on like that all the way to the castle, where they all entered, obviously passing through the statue garden, where Discord greeted his tour guide Copy, who was now receiving more visitors. It seemed he had already seen the school group off. This threw Flurry Heart off a bit, as she was still somewhat ignorant about Discord's abilities. Even so, she kept going, not without noticing one of the statues. It depicted, in terror, three quite striking figures, a centaur-like creature with a somewhat old and decrepit appearance, another, similar to a pony, but with a thin body full of holes, even in an attacking pose with an expression of hatred, and lastly, a small Pegasus, who looked like a filly. Despite the appearance of the other two beings, this last one was the one that most drew Flurry Heart's interest, mostly because of how young she looked, because of her pose with her hooves near her cheeks, and her eyes, a look full of terror, as if the last thing she had seen had been something horrible. And here we have the three villains of Equestria, defeated thanks to the mighty Discord turning them to stone, said Discord's copy to a group of tourists. The three villains of Equestria. Flurry Heart murmured, still looking at the statue from a distance. Something wrong? Asked Twilight as she came closer. Oh. It's nothing. I'm coming, Auntie, Flurry replied, then continued walking with the others. Discord, however, kept looking at Flurry Heart for a few seconds. It was obvious something crossed his mind upon seeing those three there, turned to stone. Perhaps Discord had changed targets. He had set aside stressing Twilight and now wanted to explore the little crystal princess's ideas. A mischievous smile formed on his face as he kept pace. That same afternoon, as they were all seated in the castle's dining room waiting for the meal to be served, they were chatting. Everything was quite friendly, and the atmosphere more than comfortable. You could say everyone was happy, especially Twilight and Flurry, who didn't stop talking about their plans for the summer. Twilight was dying to show Flurry Heart the school of friendship. Flurry Heart wanted to show her aunt the new spells she had learned. They had so many things in mind, they didn't stop, and even came up with some new ideas. Twilight had planned ways to keep her royal duties from interfering too much, or even to have Flurry accompany her for some of them. And speaking of which, where's Spike? Asked Shining Armor, glancing at his sister. Oh, he's in Ponyville. He decided to go ahead of our visit. He's probably with Rarity or at the castle. Though this morning he sent me a letter saying there was a big Zap apple harvest at Sweet Apple Acres. It's also likely he went to help the apples with that, Twilight answered, smiling at her brother. Ladies and gentle ponies and chaotic beings, announced another copy of Discord, entering the dining room. It's rare to see Discord far from Fluttershy, said Cadance. I know, but today he's been at my side all day. I suppose it's fine as long as he doesn't cause chaos. At least no bigger chaos than usual, Twilight replied under her breath. Ma chère mademoiselle, with great pride for all, and a tremendous pleasure, we welcome you. Now we invite you to relax, to make yourself comfortable in your chair, for the dining room is honored to present your dinner, said the Discord copy as he approached with the food trays floating behind him until the chef walked in and, using her horn, pushed Discord aside. Ahem. Princess Twilight, we wish you and your guests a good meal. You know that if you need anything, the kitchen is open for whatever you like, said the chef with a kind, cordial smile, then glared at Discord. Open to everyone except him. With that last remark, she bowed to Twilight and her guests and finally left. Discord simply set the plates in their places, then went over to where his seat was, seeing the original Discord already sitting there. The copy pretended to be outraged and left, while Twilight watched with a faint smile, though a part of her was worried that there were several Discords. She had really never stopped to think about what happened with the copies he created. Sometimes they even seemed to be independent of him. Oh, one question, Flurry Heart said, now a bit more serious. At this, Discord quickly turned to the young Alicorn with a smile. It seemed she was finally going to bring it up. Yes? What is it, dear, said Twilight. Well, a little while ago we saw the statues from afar and, well, there was one in particular that I found curious. It's about the three villains of Equestria. They? Twilight's expression changed immediately. She had already told Flurry Heart that story and how they were defeated, but this time it seemed strange that she asked about it so timidly. What is it? Well, Discord mentioned having turned them to stone. And, that statue, are they really them? Flurry Heart finally said, though she kept her eyes on her plate. Twilight saw where this was going for a moment. It wasn't the first time someone had questioned the morality of having someone turned to stone in the garden, She herself had asked the same thing many years ago, when she was just a unicorn, when discord woke up and tried to divide her and her friends. After all the chaos was over, the question crossed her mind: why would Celestia keep such a dangerous being as a mere decoration? Or worse, why would anyone keep someone else, but turn to stone, in their garden? I think I know what you mean. And the answer is yes. They are Chrysalis, Lord Tyrak, and Cozy Glow, real, trapped in that prison of stone for eternity. They're there so they can be watched at all times. Not only that, every so often the petrification spell is reapplied to make sure no tragedy occurs. You can rest easy, dear, they can't hurt anyone, Twilight said, then used her horn to lift her spoon to her plate and begin to eat. Flurry Heart really had more questions, but seeing the silence that had descended over the table, she just decided to keep eating like the others. But the idea of that Pegasus being there. She knew very well what she had done. She tried to steal all the magic in Equestria, to make Starlight and the students at the School of Friendship disappear. Not only that, but she nearly left Twilight and her friends trapped in Tartarus and, on top of everything, wanted to rule the School of Friendship or Equestria. Later she allied with Tyrak and Chrysalis, and that almost brought about the end of the realm. She knew all that very well, and still, remembering that terrified expression on the Pegasus gave her goosebumps. Even so, she kept quiet for a moment, until her gaze turned to the window, and she couldn't hold back any longer. What if she could come back? Flurry asked timidly. Don't worry, that won't happen, Shining Armor replied. Your Aunt Twily has everything under control. There's nobody more organized and careful than she is. And no, I mean, what if she could be freed? Maybe give her a second chance, free the villains? Are you joking? Said Discord, though he was really enjoying this. He just didn't want to be that obvious, and not all three, just Cozy. I mean, she could be. After all, she's a pony, like us. She has no magic, she's just a Pegasus. If we can keep her under watch and teach her about friendship, I'm sure that can't be allowed, Twilight said in a serious tone. Cozy Glow committed crimes that can't be forgiven. I know what you're thinking, but some ponies simply don't deserve a second chance. At this answer, Flurry Heart lowered her gaze again. Twilight noticed and looked at her niece for a few seconds before finally speaking. Even so, it's very noble of you to think that way. It shows your great heart, proof that you're a great pony and a great princess, Twilight said with a gentle smile. Thank you, said Flurry Heart, a bit disappointed. She hadn't expected such a closed response from Twilight, much less such a defensive stance. Even so, the idea of that Pegasus kept circling in her mind. It was almost as if she herself had turned her to stone. It felt like guilt. And, are you two staying for the summer as well? Asked Discord, trying to lighten the mood a little, though he was really enjoying the scene. He had just awakened a great interest in Flurry Heart's idea. He found it curious how she was trying to make them see the other side of the coin. Oh, no. Shining Armor and I are leaving tomorrow. We just wanted to take the chance to see Twilight. We still have many things to do in the Crystal Empire, Cadance replied. I see. Well, if you'll excuse me, I'm bored now, so I'll have mine to go, said Discord as he rose from the table, followed by a snap that made the food on his plate get up and walk beside him out of the room. Well, Flurry, when you're done, you can go see the room where you'll be staying. I hope you like it, said Twilight with a sweet smile to Flurry Heart. She just looked at her and nodded, then smiled back and kept eating. Later, as night slowly began to fall, Flurry Heart finally let herself flop onto the bed in what would now be her room for the summer. She looked at every corner of the room. From there, a smile immediately drew across her face when she saw two little teddy bears on a shelf. They were the two she used to play with Twilight when she was younger. Then she noticed a small album with a purple cover. It was obvious at a glance that it was hoofbound. Flurry used her horn to float it over to her and, once there, she read the cover, Baby Flurry Heart's Little Heart. When she finished reading, she smiled again. Pinkie Pie had made that album when Flurry was just a baby. Before she could open it, she was interrupted by a strange sound underneath her bed. She quickly set the album beside a pillow and climbed off the bed to peer beneath it. She moved slowly, lighting her horn. For a moment she felt a bit of fear at not knowing what might be under there. Even so, she approached cautiously and, with one hoof, carefully lifted the sheet, only to see what was underneath. They should make beds closer to the floor. You never know who might crawl under someone's bed, said Discord, smiling at Flurry. He quickly came out from there and stretched before looking at Flurry, who was completely confused. What? Flurry wasn't quite sure whether to feel relieved that it was Discord or afraid that it was Discord under her bed. Even so, she just shook her head a little and sighed. I thought you'd left. I did, but I didn't say where. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was actually waiting for you. I was moved by your sweet words of compassion for little, evil Cozy Glow. No doubt it makes it very clear that you're the Princess of Love, Discord said, acting as if he truly were moved. I'm not the Princess of Love. That's Mom, Flurry said with a somewhat serious look, and what did I say? Ugh, same thing, you both have crystal hearts as cutie marks. Flurry Heart turned a bit to look at her cutie mark. It was true that it looked very much like her mother's. Flurry Heart's cutie mark was the same crystal heart of the Empire, but accompanied by curved lines forming another heart on its sides. She quickly set that aside and looked back at Discord. Do you really think what I said was true? Flurry asked, a little hopeful. No, Discord replied, coldly and curtly. But it sounds fun. I met that little demon and, well, she had something going for her. She got Chrysalis and Tyrek to work together. Imagine what she'd do being go, ugh, I sounded like Celestia for a second. And Celestia wanted to unfreeze Cozy too? Something like that, but not Cozy. Anyway, let's cut to the chase. I can help you make that a reality, Discord said with a sly smile. I don't know. Maybe my aunt is right and Cozy Glow can't be redeemed. I mean, she tried to take down my aunt twice. I'm not very sure it's a good idea, Flurry answered, looking a bit downcast. Well, if she doesn't behave. She doesn't have magic anymore, and she's in the castle of Equestria's monarch. She'd be stopped in a matter of seconds. I could even put her in her place. All the princesses did something of great significance to earn their title. Imagine it, the Crystal Princess, the one who made an old villain now work for good. Flurry began to imagine what Discord was saying. It was true, her mother and her Aunt Twilight had done meaningful things for their princess titles. She admired Twilight and dreamed of being like her. Redeeming a villain would be applauded by everyone, including Twilight herself. Nothing bad will happen, right? Flurry said with a nervous smile. In the event it does, it can be fixed. Discord really wanted some entertainment. He knew it was difficult, even silly and impossible, so he truly planned to keep his part of the deal about turning Cozy back to stone if she got out of hand. In his head, he already saw everything planned out. It couldn't get out of control. As Flurry looked out her window toward the statue garden and hesitated for a second, she quickly nodded and looked back at him. What do I have to do?